Well, welcome to Modeling Time with me, Brian Banna. This should be a fairly quick video. I'm still on the Sill unit, but I'm in the painting stages. So let me bring the camera a little bit closer. And so this is what we've gotten done so far. We've got everything that needs to be painted yellow. I did some research first to make sure that I was doing the painting correctly, because I have a tendency to pretend I know what I'm talking about with this stuff, and then looking at pictures and doing some research and realizing I don't know what the heck I'm talking about sometimes. So I've got the footboards. I found some really good pictures and a number of different photographs of the Pennsylvania GP35s to put together an idea of what their paint specifications were. So the footboards are painted yellow, or the edges are painted yellow. The bottom front step is painted yellow on both sides, but the rear steps are not. So those are just left Brunswick green. Then the rear has the footboard edges painted yellow, and the coupler lift bar between the brackets is painted yellow. And I had to paint the bracket for the pilot grab iron yellow, and the same for the front end. So that's all the same. Front end and back end are the same except for the bottom step. On the side, I've got the emergency cutoff switch plate painted red on both sides, and I've got the fuel cap painted black. Now the reason I painted black is because I'm going to use all-clad aluminum over the top of that. And if you want your all-clad to really come through properly, you need to put a gloss black underneath it. And a good example of this, like for instance, if you want a bronze bell, paint it gloss black, then let that cure, and then shoot your all-clad bronze over it, and you'll get the most beautiful finish on a bronze bell. So right now, that's where that's at. And I also have the pilot grab iron painted yellow for both of them. There's one and there's the other one. So that's taken care of. So now I'm going to let this cure for probably about an hour or two, and I'll put the all-clad aluminum over the fuel filler cap. Okay, so this video is going to be fairly short. Hopefully it won't run 30 minutes or even 20 minutes. But anyway, let me go over this real quickly. The Sill unit is now 99.999% done. All that needs to be done to it is a satin varnish over it. But once I get the sub base, the cab, and the hood done, painted, decal, all that stuff, then I'll shoot a satin varnish over everything. But right now, for modeling sake, it's all done. The handrails, of course, were painted separately and then installed after they were clear coated and stuff, so I can shoot the satin varnish over everything when it's ready. So everything on here was airbrushed. Things were masked and airbrushed. I like using an airbrush a lot more than a paintbrush. It gives a much smoother and cleaner finish to it. The only thing that was not airbrushed was the black dot inside the emergency fuel cutoff switch. So the process for painting this was, you saw what the Sill unit looked like before it was painted. It was grit blasted, washed in warm soapy water, and then I put of course let it dry off, and then I put a coat of primer gray over it. I used Tamiya FS80 Royal Light Gray for my primer. I've mentioned it before, I used to use Stynylrez. It failed me after the third bottle. I don't know if they changed the formula or what happened, but I just didn't even want to chance it anymore. Tamiya is very consistent, so I use that. Oh, one of the things that I still have to do, and I just noticed it, on the inside of the pilot, where you can see that little yellow dot right there. That's the paint from the handrails. I need to cut that little knob off and then just touch it up with some green paint. No big deal. I'll do that when this is done. But so I sprayed the primer coat on. Then I sprayed the yellow where it needed to be, and that would have been on these footboard edges. And let me pull this up just a little bit. There we go. How's that? There we go. So on the footboard edges, on the front step edge, on both sides, and then on the attachment point on the pilot plate where this pilot grab goes. Those were all masked yellow. I'm sorry, all the yellow was masked. After I did that, I shot it in another coat of primer gray to cover the yellow, and then I mixed the green and shot the green over it. All this yellow stuff was masked with Tester's chrome foil. Now that's not available anymore. Luckily, maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, I found a warehouse that still had like 8 packages of it left. I bought them all out, so I have enough chrome foil. I highly suggest not using bare metal foil. The adhesive backing, when you peel it off, it stays with the model, so it's a lot of work to get that off. The old Tester's chrome foil, which was fantastic for masking, the adhesive backing wouldn't stay with the model. There might be little tiny bits that stay with the model, but it's easy to get off. You just take a piece of tacky, like the sticky side of blue painter's tape, and just dab it at it, and it'll pull right off. So all that was masked and then painted green. The MU hoses are Kato. The rubber part was painted Tamiya rubber black, and the metal part was painted with all-clad stainless steel. Even though these aren't stainless steel, the silver had the tone to it that I wanted. And then the glad hands are stuffed down inside the MU pockets. On the side, the emergency fuel cutoff switch was masked. First it was painted red, then masked, and the fuel filler cap was painted black, then all-clad stainless steel over it, then that was all masked, and then the paint process again. Paint the primer over it, and then paint the green over all of that. The same process happened for the handrails. I cleaned off all the parting lines. There's a very, very fine parting line on the top edge and the bottom edge and down the sides of the stanchions. So I just scraped those, grit blasted them, primer gray, yellow, mask, primer gray, and then the green. So that pretty much takes care of the painting of it. The only detail I really had to add to the handrails were these dummy receptacles on the stanchions here. One here and one on the front here. Other than that, everything was done with, well, the yellow is Tamiya flat yellow, and the green is a mixture that I came up with. The decals are all microscale, and that takes care of that pretty much. Now the ATS pickup shoe cable, that just goes, I drilled a hole deep into this detail part, so it's just sitting up in there and it holds real nicely. I love how that detail looks. So anyway, let's go over a little bit of the paint mix. No manufacturer, or let me step back on that. None of the manufacturers are uniform with Pennsylvania Brunswick green or dark locomotive green. Let me pull this back so I can talk to you. Sorry about the delay here, folks. I just would rather talk to you face to face rather than you just looking at a blank desktop there. Okay. So, like I said, none of the manufacturers really are uniform with the Pennsylvania Brunswick green or dark green locomotive enamel, however you want to talk it, or however you want to refer to it. So I didn't want to use true color paint. I love true color paint, don't get me wrong. It's just I use way too much of it. You know, remember those the blue Missouri Pacific units I was going to do? Just doing the frame and the trucks, that was one whole bottle thinned evenly, so that's basically 2 bottles of paint on that. So I wanted to find something different that covers smoothly in thin coats or full in thin coats. So I've been using this Mission Models paints, and I like them a lot, and the local hobby store that I go to has the full line of Mission Model paints. So I went through the rack and looked for a color that kind of looked Brunswick green, and I found this this MMP 058 dark green, this one right here. See if we can get that on focus. There we go. So I used this color. By itself, it's not good. And then, of course, I use black. So the ratio that I mix these two is 2 drops of the green to 1 drop of black. And then that's the color you actually, let me step back again, that's not the color that you see on my frame, on my model. Once that has dried, it needs a coat of clear gloss, and this is the gloss that I use, the all-clad aqua gloss, and that gives it that really deep, rich Brunswick green, which I consider. So, you know, like, I think the closest to it was probably Athearn's Genesis F-unit set when they first came out with the Highliner Genesis shells and all that. They came out with the Pennsylvania ones first, and I think that was probably the closest. But all the other manufacturers, if you took one of each, put them all, you know, of whatever they made, the Athearn models, the True Scale Trains, the Walthers, the Lifelike, P2K, if you put all those, you know, lined up, they'd all be different colors. So I'm going to standardize on the green that I made. Now, I measure my paint. I don't go a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Most of the time, I would say probably better than 80 to 90% of the time, I do it in drops, so I count drops. The nice thing about these are droppers. You don't pour them out. They've got little holes in the top, and you just turn them upside down, and you lightly squeeze, and you can get uniform drops to come out. So I am a drop counter. So it's 2 to 1, 2 parts green to 1 part black, and then add those together, and then I use Mr. Leveling Thinner to thin it. So for instance, if I use 20 drops of green, then I use 10 drops of black, that means I use 30 drops of thinner. So it's thinned 1 to 1. And then once that dries, like I said, I use all-clad aqua gloss to seal it. Because this paint, if you don't use the polymer additive to it, which I don't use, the paint's very fragile, and you can scuff it, and you can easily chip it or mark it and stuff like that. But once you put the all-clad aqua gloss on it, it hardens really good and gives it a very, very nice protective surface, as well as a good decaling surface. So that's my process for painting this. So with that done, I can now move on to the sub bases, or the sub base. Actually, this in real life they don't call this sub base. They're equipment boxes underneath, and then the battery boxes up front. But in their modeling community, we call this a cab sub base, which is fine. I mean, we know what that is. So I'll get started on that pretty much right away. First, I need to design the snow shields that go on the intakes, over the inertial intakes behind the cab for a Erie Lackawanna GP35 that I'm working on for a friend. So I need to get those designed and get them off to the 3D printer, and then I'm going to jump right in to getting these sub bases done. And I'll go over the sub base in that video, what I need to do to them. So that's it. And I'm making some good progress. I'm really excited about getting this model done, and I really like the paint work on it. I think it turned out fantastic, and I'm progressing well on this model. So I'll catch you next time, and thank you very much for watching.